Welcome to the Leaders in Payments podcast, where we talk to C-level leaders from across the payments landscape. We'll be discussing the products and services that impact the payment space today, as well as trends and predictions for the future of payments. We will also hear stories from our guests about their journeys to the top.
By the nature of our closed loop business, we have an advantage of having the more data from merchants, so-called level 3 data, then we can share with customers and create value-add services on top of that.
That was Alexey Gavrilenya, Group President of North American Fuel Cards at Fleetcor, and he is our special guest this week on episode 149 of the Leaders in Payments podcast. And I'm your host, Greg Myers. For someone who never thought he would end up in payments, Alexey sure has proven himself wrong. Having been with Fleetcor for more than 13 years, Alexey has overseen operations in Russia, London, and now stateside in Atlanta. And he credits a lot of his success to his two passions, bringing the future forward and continually learning new things through a burning curiosity. Fleetcor is an established player in the payment space with more than 20 years in the ecosystem and a market cap of $20 billion. As for their core offering, they help businesses be more effective by providing them best-in-class payment tools, according to Alexey. Although they might be known for their fleet card business, they generate less than half of their revenue annually from fleet cards. Their model caters to a two-sided marketplace in that they not only work with customers, but they also acquire merchants and drive revenue to their bottom line. Their global headcount is around 10,000 employees with a U.S. presence of 2,000 to 3,000. Tune in to hear more about this dynamic company from one of their seasoned leaders, including a glimpse into the future of fintech as it relates to big tech, embedded finance, and legacy players going beyond payments. We've got a great episode ahead, so let's get started. Hi, Alexey. Thank you for being here, and welcome to the Leaders in Payments podcast.
Hey, Greg. Thanks so much for having me, and thank you everyone for joining us today.
Absolutely. So let's dive right in. Tell our audience a little bit about yourself, maybe where you grew up, where you went to school, where you currently live, a few things like that. We'll cover your professional career in a few minutes, but maybe just a few things about yourself.
Absolutely. I grew up and went to school in a small Eastern European country called Belarus. That's the place where I started my career, first launching what we would call a corporate venture startup, a company that's similar to LexisNexis here in the US. Eventually, it became the market leader and a very successful business. Afterwards, I went to London Business School. I've done my MBA there. Right afterwards, Fleetcor, a company I'm working for right now, hired me. That's where I've been working for the last 13 years. I never planned to work it for so long. So right now, I'm working for the company. And I started working in Moscow, Russia, running the Russian business there. Afterwards, I moved to London, running our European business. And for the last 3 years, I've been based here in Atlanta, US, running our North American fleet business.
Well, let's talk about Fleetcor. So tell the audience what Fleetcor does.
That's a very good question. Fleetcor is actually one of the established players in the payment space. So first off, we're kind of 20 years plus in the business. We're a publicly listed company, current market cap about $20 billion. What we do, we are a specialist business payment company. So we help businesses to be more effective by providing them best-in-class payment tools. Unlike some other players, we're a closed loop. We both an issuer of payment tokens like cards, virtual cards, tags, and we're an acquirer of those tokens. And we work with hundreds of thousands of businesses across the globe. We process transactions in 100 countries. We have a scale of very sizable financial institution.
And do you have a direct sales team or go through partnerships, or is it a little bit of both?
We are mostly a direct sales organization. In terms of the go-to-market strategy, we work, as I said, with businesses, small, mid, and large cap. And obviously for each and every type of business, we have a dedicated sales channels. For the small and mid markets, we go mostly via digital channel, i.e. acquiring customers via Google, Facebook, you name it. And then mid-market and up-market, we serve via field channels and enterprise channels. We have a bit of partnerships with a few banks across the globe, in Brazil, here a bit in US, but mostly, again, we do direct sales.
And then is it typically transaction fee based, or is there some SaaS components to it?
Payments these days are very much payments plus some sort of a solution, right? Gone are the days where pure payment play would make decent economics. So we do provide SaaS type of services, and obviously we charge for those.
Okay. Can you disclose how many employees there are, maybe both global and within the US?
Globally, we have close to 10,000 employees. And here in US, we have about 2,000 to 3,000.
What would you say differentiates your company from your competitors out there?
That's a good question. First, by the nature of us being a closed loop player, we have a network that helps us provide those specialist business payment solutions. So we basically, your two-sided marketplace where we work with customers, we issue them payment products, and then we go and acquire merchants and we drive traffic and revenue to them. And by the nature of our closed loop business, we have an advantage of having the more data from merchants, so-called level 3 data, then we can share with customers and create value add services on top of that. And we have better economics than your regular open loop card products. And that allows us to provide more savings to our customers. So first and foremost is networks. And obviously it's super hard to build, as you can imagine. You need customers to acquire merchants, and merchants will ask you, hey, how many customers you have? And if you don't have enough customers, merchants will want to work with you. So it takes years to build those two-sided marketplaces. And because of that, we have a decent moat in the market. And those networks, they cut across various specialist payment products, whether it's fleet cards, lodging, toll products, or even corporate payments, virtual card that allows us our proprietary virtual card acceptance network gives us a competitive edge in the market against the regular banks. And we can monetize the spend for our businesses, for our customers, way better than, I guess, anyone in the market because of that network. So that's first, networks. Second is actually data. I think we are better than most folks out there in the market leveraging data to provide value-added services to our customers. And there are a few examples where we do that. So externally for our customers, for example, we blend the connected vehicle data with the payment transaction. And because of that, we offer electrical vehicle payment solution that we think is quite unique in the market. And that allows our customers to move to more carbon neutral fleets. Or we, again, blend the connected vehicle data that tells us the location of the vehicle with the location of the merchant. And we can authorize or decline a transaction real time based on the location of the vehicle. So the use cases like that allows us to blend different sources of data and create services for our customers to outcompete the banks and other providers. And internally, we use that quite a lot. There are, again, a few super great use cases where data helps us to approve applications for credit from our customers. We use a machine learning algorithm and hundreds of data points that allows us to provide credit to SMBs, even with FICO scores and all so-called credit files that banks will never touch. And frankly speaking, even alternative lenders will never work with them. But by the nature of the data we have accumulated in the market and by the nature of products, specialist products, we can do that. And more often than not, for small businesses, our Fleetcor is one of the first credit products they can actually get a hold of and build their credit histories. We're using data and machine learning for real-time fraud detection and actioning that helps us, again, to reduce fraud to our customers And that allows our customers to be certain that they will not face any issues with suspicious transactions. Or we're using data to predict customer attrition and develop personalized offers to retain them, adjust service levels, or drive the outreach campaign. So data is permeating the whole of our organization. And again, by the nature of the history we have, and by the nature of the technologies and data infrastructure we have, we came up with a few powerful use cases that allow us to be ahead of the competition.
Okay. And you mentioned a couple times the word fleet, and obviously the name of the company is Fleetcor. So was that the origin of the company, was to service fleets?
That's exactly the truth. And frankly speaking, when I joined the company, we never thought about Fleetcor as a payment company. Because you've been in the payment industry for quite a while. Payments wasn't the thing, wasn't such a buzzword like 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And we used to do only fleet cars, and we used to think about ourselves as a fleet car company or fuel car company. These days, fleet cars generate less than half of our revenue globally. We moved way beyond that to solutions like lodging, corporate payments, tolls. So we kind of right now way beyond the just fuel car products.
You were talking about the past, but let's talk about the future a little bit. So where do you see the payments industry heading in, say, the next 2 or 3 years?
That's a very good question. And as you know, and your audience will know, the big tax coming to the payments industry is obviously an elephant in the room. By the nature of their massive loyal user bases, by the nature of their powerful ecosystems and troves of data they have on customers, obviously they have a very unique position to disrupt and change the payments landscape here in the US and globally. And obviously everyone already knows that it's happening in China with WeChat and Alipay. They will have a massive impact to the industry. Whether banks will be able to adjust and be something else than just a utility provider or credit provider is an open question. As your audience probably knows, the banks like JP Morgan, they recently announced massive digital transformation investments not to be just a commodity pipes. Whether they will be able to succeed is an open question. That's for sure is, for me at least, number one trend to watch. Second, it's embedded finance and payments. And a few of the speakers on that podcast share their experience there. For sure, payments becomes just a part of the service for a lot of businesses out there. They become invisible. They become ambient. And more businesses, just regular businesses, will be doing payments and lending as part of their package. For example, I'm sitting on the board of the exciting global relocation company called Beniva. They're based in London, and it's just a tech startup. And even though they're working in the global mobility industry, part of their service offering is payments to employees who've been relocated. Part of their service offering is advanced lending for people who would like to make a deposit for the flat or apartment on their rent. So even businesses like that already offer payments and lending as part of their services. So that's for sure will be only accelerating. And we, Fleetcor and other players like us, will be standing behind those businesses, helping them to be more effective. At the same time, I do believe that fintechs and legacy players will get more into software and services. As payments become more in a commodity, for us and for other players to thrive in this environment, we have to just go beyond the payment and provide new value-add services, new SaaS type of solutions that will help our customers to see the value. So yes, that's, I think, is three big trends: big tax, embedded finance, and going beyond payments for legacy players.
Okay. With most of the people that I talk to, one other thing seems to come up, so I want to ask you about that. Where do you think crypto and blockchain kind of fit into the future of payments?
Yeah, first, as you know, and your audience knows, crypto is already a reality. It's probably less of a reality in payments per se. It's more like an investment reality at the moment. I know most of the platforms doing a lot of work trying to improve their carbon footprint of their platforms, to improve the processing capacity of their platforms, to get more regulatory clarity. So once those hurdles are solved, I think crypto would be definitely another major payments mechanism out there in the market. And the reason I believe in that is just by the nature of the network effect that crypto platforms have managed to create, and the number of users using the cryptos for various use cases, and the number of various players. That network ecosystem is definitely super powerful, and I'm sure it will snowball and will provide new exciting solutions in the payment space. Having said that, I don't believe it will be 22 case, and I believe the businesses will be definitely a slow adopter of crypto as the way of payment beyond the few innovators like Tesla's of the world. Blockchain, I think these days is part and parcel of day-to-day business almost. And us and other players building solutions of the blockchain that have pretty unique use cases. I don't believe it's a future. It will be just increasing adoption of the blockchain as a technology to provide solutions that will be more served with existing alternatives.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty solid view that I hear from a lot of people. One thing that kind of popped into my head, you were talking about, you have the two-sided marketplace. So you have consumers and businesses. On sort of more the consumer side, as a global company, the whole privacy thing comes up a lot. You've got big tech that also has the privacy challenges. What's your view on privacy? I mean, in the US, we're lagging way behind Europe as far as having any kind of government mandates or compliance rules around privacy. I mean, hopefully at the federal level it's coming at some point. But do you see a lot of challenges around privacy in your business?
Yeah, that's a good topic. As you referred, US is probably a bit behind Europe. If you look in Europe and you talk to anyone in Europe in payments, the first thing you will hear back is GDPR.
Right.
When I worked there 4 years ago, 5 years ago, we were going through the adoption of GDPR, and it was quite an impactful change to us, both in terms of how we acquire customers, in terms of how we serve our customers, in terms of just a regulatory compliance element. Having went through that, I'm telling you, it's not an easy lift. And if you look here in the US, what you see is California is kind of closest to the European privacy regulations. And by the nature of the state, the size of the state, the influence they have on other states, you can easily see there would be more Europe-like, GDPR-like privacy laws and regulations coming to the market. Having said that, it's hard for me to really tell you whether US will follow one-to-one the European example. And the reason why, because frankly speaking, the laws is not perfect. The GDPR law is not perfect. And me as a consumer, I actually benefit from the fact that companies I'm working with, they have information about me because it helps them to tailor their products and services and offerings to me. Obviously, I want this to happen in a controlled fashion. I don't want this to happen in a way where I'm not fully aware or I don't get value back from sharing the data. So I wouldn't say, again, the law is perfect, but I do believe US is moving closer to that regulatory framework. And for now, I would say there is not much of an impact, again, except for California case in our business, but we will be ready. We will be ready to comply with whatever regulation US authorities will come up with.
Well, let's switch gears and talk about you a little bit. And you alluded to some of this earlier, but maybe walk us through. You graduated from London School of Business. What was your first job? And then maybe your progression up to where you are today.
Yeah. Right after my MBA, I joined Fleetcor. And again, I've been in the business for 13 years. I started as a head of our Russian business in Moscow, Russia. Then I moved to London. I run our European business out of London. And then for the last 3 years, I've been running our North America business, fleet business here in the US. That's a bit of my background. And again, in payments, I would say I probably ended up to be almost unexpected for me. I never thought I'm joining payment business. I thought I was joining a network company that has this two-sided marketplace, a fleet company. But here we are, kind of one of the biggest globally known corporate payment company.
Okay. And what are some things you're passionate about? So maybe one work-related passion and one personal passion.
What I'm passionate about, and you probably can talk to my teammates and they will tell you, I'm super passionate about bringing forward the future. As one of the science fiction writers wrote, the future is here. It's not just equally distributed. What I'm passionate about is to bring this future forward because I believe there is a massive positive impact that we can create with that, whether it's small business owner trying to set up his business and not having access to credit, and we can provide this credit, passionate about that, or we help him to move to digital payments, our solutions across the globe. So I'm super passionate about using the technology and data and bringing forward those innovative tools that are just cool and they're fun to work on and they create this positive vibe well beyond the business itself. On a personal level, I would say I'm a curious person. I like reading books. I like learning new things. When tech became so big, I decided to take on master level classes in computer science and learn more about how to talk to data people, tech people, to understand their challenges, understand how I can help. And I'm like reading books. I follow books, whether I run or cycle. I would probably listen to some science book or course or podcast.
And I always like to ask this question of all of my guests because I feel like given people all have different backgrounds, they come up with different kind of concepts and ideas for this. But payments has become such a hot industry for people to come into. I mean, the word fintech didn't even exist 10 years ago. And like you mentioned, payments wasn't a hot place to work. But now I think kids coming out of college, they may have even taken courses about fintech in college. They look at this industry as, hey, I can build a career in this industry. So given your experience and your success, what would your advice be to someone coming right out of college? They want to come into this industry. What would you tell them to do to be successful?
It's a good question. My number one advice would be not to follow buzzwords. Yes, payments and fintechs is super cool these days, and it sounds exciting to join some fintech. But what I would advise somebody who is just starting their careers is really to think beyond buzzwords and think about this business from first principle, from fundamentals. Why exactly this business is unique? Why is it better than all the other businesses out there? What is so unique about the business model of this company? Why do you think they will be successful in 5-10 years? If you cannot answer these questions, whether they're in the payment business or in retail, it really doesn't matter. You would not be super happy working in a business that's struggling, and you would not be super happy financially too, because the business will not take off. So first and foremost, I would recommend to set aside those buzzwords and start thinking about the business, what they do for the customers, what value they create for the customers, how they're unique. And then based on that, then think, hey, maybe that business sounds like a good business and I can work there and I can do something exciting and cool. Then go for it, for sure.
That's all definitely good advice. I appreciate you sharing that. Well, Alexey, we've covered a lot of ground already on you and your background and Fleetcor and the company and what you do there. And then also, obviously, we've talked about the industry and some trends in the future. So is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
No, I think it's a good conversation. Thanks so much for joining our podcast today. And Greg, thanks so much for inviting me here. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much. I know you're very busy and your time's very valuable. So I really appreciate you being on the show today.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. And to all you listeners out there, I thank you for your time as well. And until the next story.
Thank you for joining us this week on the Leaders in Payments podcast. Make sure you visit our website at leadersinpayments.com, where you can subscribe to the show and where you'll find our show notes. If you enjoyed listening, please share on your social channels as well.